All right, let's dive right into today's explainer. We're looking at a real maritime investigation briefing covering the 1934 tragedy of the passenger liner SS Morro Castle. Now, for those of you currently working at sea or in training, this isn't just dusty history. It's an absolute masterclass in seeing exactly how catastrophes are built, literally step by step. We're going to break down the operational failures, the total collapse in command, and the really tragic consequences of losing your situational awareness.
So I want you to put yourself on the bridge right now. Ask yourself, what would you do in this exact situation? Think about it. It's the middle of the night. A violent nor'easter's just hammering your vessel. You've just unexpectedly taken command because, well, the master suddenly died. And right at that moment, someone reports smoke. Every single second, every helm order you give, every communication, it dictates who lives and who dies. How do you respond?
To make sense of all this chaos, we're splitting this case study into 3 phases. 1. Before the incident. 2. During the incident. And 3. After the incident.
Let's start with part 1, before incident, looking at the pre-accident conditions.
Accidents at sea, they almost never happen instantly, right? They brew in unsafe conditions. It's that classic Swiss cheese model of accident causation, and it aligns perfectly here. Look at the ship's physical state. It's a luxury liner packed with highly flammable wood veneers and lacquered paint. Structurally, there were these hidden cavities between the ceilings and steel bulkheads that totally bypassed the fire doors. Then you combine that with a crew that was fatigued, severely underpaid, and poorly trained. Command was actively ignoring safety and fire drills just so they wouldn't panic the passengers on their vacation. And to top the whole thing off, there's a heavy 30-knot storm brewing outside. The trap was completely set.
And things were falling apart at the very top of the chain of command, too. These are the actual final words from the veteran Captain Wilmot, and they really show his paranoia at the time. He was convinced saboteurs were aboard, plotting against him. Just hours after saying this to his chief officer, well, the captain was found dead in his bathtub. It was likely a heart attack, though rumors of poisoning definitely went around.
This shows a fatal disruption of leadership. Right as the Morro Castle sails into a punishing storm, they lose their master. Command gets hastily shoved onto Chief Officer William Worms. Now, this guy had been awake for over 24 hours, he wasn't exactly liked by the crew, and suddenly he's under immense, unexpected pressure. So, your bridge watchkeeping condition? Completely destabilized.
Okay, moving to part 2. During incident, the critical moment.
So when this exhausted, newly shuffled command gets tested in the dead of night, things escalate terrifyingly fast. At 0250 a.m., smoke is spotted. By 0310 a.m., literally just 20 minutes later, the fire is completely burned through the main electrical cables and the hydraulic steering lines. Boom. The ship goes dark and is totally dead in the water. It then took the acting captain a full 30 minutes to even authorize a distress call, and all they got out was a single desperate SOS before the radio batteries literally exploded from the intense heat.
Now, you might be wondering, how does a small locker fire take down a massive ship in 20 minutes? Well, it was a monumental breakdown in bridge resource management. Acting Captain Worms kept the ship cruising at 19 knots, plowing straight into a 30-knot headwind. By failing to alter course and put the wind astern, he essentially turned the deck into a 50-knot wind tunnel. That just violently fanned the flames from the bow straight back to the stern, giving the fire an endless supply of oxygen. This was the exact moment where the disaster could have been stopped, but wasn't.
And the bridge's poor decisions were matched by some pretty catastrophic errors down on the deck. When the crew first found that burning locker, they hesitated, and that cost them the ship. Instead of grabbing a nearby fire extinguisher, they just slammed the door shut and ran off to report it. Vital seconds completely wasted. They also didn't manually close the fire doors, giving the flames a totally free path. Up top, you've got command paralysis. Acting Captain Worms didn't even leave the bridge once to actually assess the damage. And to make it infinitely worse, a Lyle line-throwing gun, which is an explosive hazard, was improperly stored right above the fire. It went off like a bomb, shattered the windows, and let those gale force winds rip right into the ship's interior.
Take a look at this number, 6. That's it. That is the absolute maximum number of fire hydrants the Morro Castle's plumbing could support with decent water pressure at any one time. But because the crew was panicked and totally untrained, they ran around and cranked open all 42 hydrants at the exact same time. And the result? Fire main water pressure drops instantly to 0. Every single fire hose on the vessel became completely useless.
Which brings us to part 3 after incident, the response and the lessons learned.
The abandoned ship phase, well, it was a total collapse of muster discipline. The ship had 12 lifeboats, which was plenty to hold 408 people, but only 6 boats ever made it to the water. Why? Because the late Captain Wilmot kept ordering the boats to be repainted for aesthetic reasons, literally gluing the remaining boats to the deck with thick layers of dried paint. And those 6 boats that did launch, they only had 85 people in them. Shockingly, most of them were crew members just fleeing the ship, leaving the passengers completely trapped on the burning stern.
And here is the really tragic result of all that. 137 passengers and crew died. Some burned on the decks, but many others drowned in the heavy seas. And horrifically, a lot of victims actually broke their necks when they hit the water, because they were never taught how to properly hold down their stiff cork life jackets when jumping, a direct, deadly consequence of skipping those safety drills.
Now, as seafarers, it's absolutely crucial to understand that maritime regulations are written in blood. The failures on the Morro Castle are exactly why we have the strict maritime standards we sail under today. That flammable construction, it led to huge SOLAS updates mandating fire-retardant materials and automatic fire doors. The utter lack of crew coordination, that paved the way for STCW, making training and certification mandatory for all of us. And the abysmal company management is exactly why we now operate under the ISM code and audited safety management systems.
Ultimately, the big operational takeaway from the Morro Castle is the catastrophic cost of losing situational awareness. I mean, from ignoring disabled fire alarms, to opening way too many hydrants, to steering a burning ship at 19 knots straight into a gale, every single level of the ship's hierarchy failed to understand what was happening around them and project the deadly consequences of their actions. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. Accidents don't just happen, right? They're built step by step, and they are allowed to happen by the people standing watch. So the next time you step onto the bridge or out on the deck, what proactive steps are you going to take? How will you make sure you're the one who spots the hazards, speaks up, and breaks that error chain before a disaster even begins? Keep your eyes open out there, really know your equipment, and never ever compromise on safety.